A really short version of the sermon would be, well, people of Windham, I've just told you about the end of the world. Have a nice day. There are donuts up back. You can go off your diet now, because there won't be anything left. This coming year, 2016, marks the 50th anniversary of a very important event of my life and the life of my family. On August 17th of 1966, when I was just a youngster, at about 3:30 in the morning, I was awakened by my mother screaming, "The house is on fire." And we had no smoke detectors in those days, by the way, for those of you who don't remember 1966. My mother was the smoke detector, thank God. And so we get up and we lived in a ranch home, and we looked down the hallway, and the whole other end of the house was engulfed in flames. We found out later that lightning had hit the electrical service. They didn't ground those things very well in the 60s, in the early 60s. They do now. We didn't have the same electrical codes, and it ignited the electric clocks at that end of the building. The lightning did. So my mother shoves me and my brother and my grandmother out the front door. She has the presence of mind. My mother's like Superwoman in this story, by the way. She has the presence of mind to lock the door behind us because she knew we would try to get back in. And she goes back into the bedroom, and by then, she realizes my father's unconscious. She picks up my 200-pound father and throws him out the window. You hear the stories about the adrenaline thing when people pick up a car. She picked up my father, and she's a little woman. I mean, she's, I think you're bigger than my mother was. And she picked him up, out the window he goes. Grabs my baby sister, wraps my baby sister in her night clothes, and jumps out the window. And just as she lands on her back, with my baby sister looking very confused, the family cat jumps out the window after her. So we all got saved. We're all safe. Amen. Amen. It's like it happened yesterday. But the thing I remember the most, the lesson I learned from this, and I'm really sad today because what's happening in the world, and I'm this weepy old man, so you just have to deal with it. But I'm retiring, so you have to worry about it. My parents told us over and over again that day, we have each other. We have each other. It was, wow, what a gift. We have each other. And how important that was. My parents, this was the 60s, it was the baby boom. I'm a baby boomer. How many people here are baby boomers? We're bankrupt in Social Security. But my parents put all this money and their efforts into building this house, and it was gone. Everything was gone. The house is gone. The foundation is there. Everything's gone. But we have each other. We have the relationship with each other. And wow, what a gift that is. And if you haven't had that experience, I don't recommend you going home and burning your house down. Because it sucks. It really sucks. But we had each other. And, I had this nice Lutheran law and gospel sermon written for you today, and I kind of scrapped it after what happened in Paris, because I think in light of the gospel today, it's good to remind ourselves of what's really important. And that's really what Jesus is saying in the gospel today. These disciples and these religious leaders of his day are all proud and happy that there's all these stones and these beautiful things and this beautiful temple and all of that. And Jesus says, this stuff's all going to be gone. It's all going to be gone. Last week we had remember the gospel last week? How many of you remember the gospels about last week? Okay, I will tell Pastor Maria. I won't tell Pastor Maria that you don't remember. She really heard. The widow's mite. The widow's mite. This woman takes all of the money she has to live on, and she throws it in the treasury, while these fat cats put a little bit in there, but not nearly what they needed to do. These religious leaders are squeezing the life out of this woman to support a temple that Jesus says in the next breath is going to be gone. And in these times, in this crazy world in which we live, and in the times when we lose people that we love, and everyone in this room probably has lost someone that you love, we are reminded of how important it is that the most healing thing that we can experience at a time like this is our relationships with one another and the communities in which we live and move and work and pray. It's about who we are as God's children, and it's about who we are to one another. And that is really what heals us and gives us hope. If you go back, after church, if you want to take another look at that Hebrews reading that we just heard this morning, where Paul and the author of Hebrews really wasn't Paul, but I'm not going to get into the scriptural theology today. But the author of Hebrews writes that the community encourages one another. It's the chief purpose of that community is to encourage one another and to be part of one another. That's what's really important. When these things happen, they're horrific, and it's all over the news, and it gets repeated over and over and over again. And it is interesting. I mean, people that don't even know each other, they're making little makeshift memorials in the streets of Paris or the streets of Boston after the marathon, the Boston Marathon bombing, or at the World Trade Center, where these things have happened, in the mall in Nigeria last year. They make these memorials that people that don't even know each other pray together and sing together, hold hands. There was a picture, I don't know if you saw it in the news, of this man outside the theater in Paris. They rolled out a baby grand piano and he was playing John Lennon, and people were standing around singing Imagine, the song by John Lennon. But in all of that, we are reminded of what's really important. And it is really crucial for us that we remember that the one reminding us of this constantly is Jesus Christ. Because it is in Jesus Christ, it is in the Eucharist that we celebrate, it is in the baptism that makes us God's children. It is in all of that we can call ourselves a community, and more than just a community. I mean, nothing against the Kiwanis Club or any of that, but we're more than that. We are part of one another. We're really part of one another. Like my parents hugging us and saying, we have each other in a world that is filled with violence and hate and religious fundamentalism. And I just need to say, be careful. I mean, now there's all this anti-Muslim stuff going on too. Just be careful of that, because we're talking about a crazy, crazy, crazy minority of people. I have very good friends through the Council of Churches who are Muslims who are just in horror at what just happened. But we people of faith, we are really part of each other, and that's really what's the most important thing, and it's what we turn to. Years ago, I was when I was I hadn't been ordained very long, so probably like 35 years ago, and I was in Lewiston, and I preached a sermon at St. Patrick's in Lewiston. I was a Catholic priest for 9 years before I became a Lutheran pastor. I called that my lateral transfer. So if I do Catholic things, like if I genuflect or something, just ignore me. So I just always do. What was I saying? Oh, so I gave a sermon. And I had preached the week before about forgiveness, and I said, is there somebody in your life that you are having problems with, or that you're estranged from? Is there someone in your life that you're not speaking to? The crazy uncle, or the stupid brother, or the sister who's got some personality disorder that needs diagnosed, or whatever it is. I said, why don't you call that person and talk to them? Do some reconciling. And I don't even remember what the gospel was. Maybe it was something about forgiveness. And I remember the week after that, someone stopped at the door. I was greeting people at the door after church. And she said, I just want you to know that after last week's sermon, I called my sister that I hadn't spoken to in about 10 years. And we're having lunch this week. First of all, I thought, man, somebody actually listened to the sermon. So maybe the best response we can have to what's happening in the world when something like this happens is to look in our own lives, first of all. And do we have a broken relationship out there that needs some healing? You know, do we hug the people around us enough? Or if you're not a hugger, I don't know, high five or elbow thump or something, but do you tell the people around you that you love them? You know, do you show that you care for the people around you? You know, when's the last time you made sure that some hungry person was fed, or some homeless person had a new blanket or a pair of socks or something? I mean, there's so many ways. So maybe our best response to what's happening in the world is to really show love. You know, that's really our belonging to each other and our loving each other and our capacity to love and forgive and be community with one another. Those are the real stones on which the church is built. Those are the real beautiful, beautiful cathedrals and temples and mosques and places of worship throughout the world. It's building on love. We are living stones for the church. And so when the physical stones crumble and fall, we are there still, because we are still the church. We are still God's children, looking at one another, hopefully, as God's children. So I think that's how we get through these things. You know, I think it's, that love is more powerful than any nut job with a gun or a bomb in a theater in Colorado, or on a college campus, or in a theater in Paris, or wherever. It's more powerful than all of those horrible things that we see across our television screens every day. And so in our grief and in our sadness and trauma, we still dare to hope, because we have the capacity to love. And just like a family that lost everything 50 years ago, we still have each other. I came across, in this world of instantaneous communication, I came across a nice blog post today. I have to pull it up on my phone. I forgot to print it out when I was at St. Ansgar getting my robes this morning. And if I can hold it far enough away, I'll be able to read it to you. This is from a blog by David Henson. And it's a blog called God, Our Midwife, Birthing Peace from Violence and War. I thought I'd share that with you today. And he wrote this in reference to today's Holy Gospel from the 13th chapter of Mark, in light of what's happening in the world. He says, there will be, first of all, he quotes a little bit of scripture in and out of this blog post. So let me just read it to you. There will be wars and rumors of wars, and wars that will shake the foundations of the world and your faith in humanity. There will be death. There will be disaster. There will be all manner of things in this life to rattle your soul. There will be worry, anxiety, fear, hatred, racism, homophobia, injustice, ageism, terrorism. There will be wars and rumors of wars, but it is not the end of the world. The world ends not with flames and terror, blood and carnage. That's not what our faith tells us. That's not what Jesus tells us today in the wake of violence and terrorism. He tells us the end is yet to come. Remember how the gospel ends? These are the birth pangs, he says. He tells us the end is yet to come. Fear not. This is not how the world ends. The world ends with peace and not violence. And that is the end of the world that we look forward to. The end of this violent world, birthing a peaceful one. The end of an impoverished world, birthing a just one. The end of a hateful world, birthing a world pulsing with love. Peace, birthed from the depths of violence, is a holy child indeed, because violence begets violence. Come, God, our great midwife, in the midst of our world's birth pangs and labored groans for renewal. Come, God, and help us